This is no fairy tale. It's the raw, unfiltered reality of a nightmare unleashed. In one terrifying instant, a 76-year-old cowboy's life hung in the balance. He was ambushed, surprised, and attacked by a gorilla, a creature no one expected to encounter. The attack was lightning fast, the force brutal. In mere seconds, James's world was turned upside down. But to truly understand how this horrific day unfolded, we need to return to the calm before the storm. From which corner of the world are you witnessing this moment? Share your country and city in the comments below. Subscribe to the Wind Echo Untold channel. Join our community and discover the best stories of loyalty from around the world.
James, a seasoned Texas cowboy of 76, his face etched with the stories of a life lived under the sun, his eyes having witnessed more sunrises than most could imagine, knew those woods like the back of his hand. Mounted on his trusty steed, he rode through the familiar forest, accompanied by his elite guard, 3 loyal Argentine Dogos, Tango, Bruto, and Nina. They weren't just dogs, they were his shadow, his family. Tango, the elder statesman and leader of the pack, Bruto, the unwavering force of nature, and Nina, the agile and intelligent strategist. Together, they were an unbreakable team, accustomed to the peaceful silence of the countryside. The morning had begun like any other. The warm Texas spring sun filtered through the canopy of leaves. The air was crisp and clean, and the only sounds were the gentle creak of James's saddle and the steady rhythm of his horse's hooves. The familiarity of the surroundings was a comforting blanket. James felt the light breeze on his face and relaxed, trusting in his keen senses, and, above all, in the unwavering intuition of his dogs, who had always alerted him to any danger lurking ahead. The patrol followed its usual course, a time-honored ritual he had repeated for decades without incident. Then, the tranquility shattered in a way James couldn't quite place. A sudden, unnatural silence swallowed every sound of the forest. The birds ceased their cheerful chirping. The wind seemed to hold its breath. James felt a prickle of unease crawl up his spine, a primal instinct screaming danger. His experienced eyes scanned the undergrowth, but he saw nothing out of the ordinary. However, the behavior of his dogs was unmistakable. Tango froze in his tracks, his head held high, the muscles in his powerful body coiled and tense. Bruto let out a low, guttural growl that rumbled deep in his chest. Nina pressed herself tightly between the legs of James's horse, her usually bright eyes wide with a palpable fear. James reined in his horse, his heart pounding a heavy rhythm against his ribs. He trusted the instincts of his dogs more than anything he could see or hear. The tension in the air was thick and heavy, an unseen threat that felt like it was watching him from the shadows. Whatever it wasn't a snake, nor a coyote. The fear that gripped Nina was different, something more primal, more terrifying. James knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that he and his dogs were being observed by something that shouldn't be there. He tightened his grip on the reins, ready to turn back, being unaware that it was already too late. The nightmare was about to begin. The silence in the forest was not one of peace, but of a silent, predatory hunt. James gripped the reins tightly, his eyes searching for a threat he knew was there. That's when he saw it. Not a pair of coyote eyes, nor the fiery glow of a puma. Hidden in the thick undergrowth, something large and dark watched him. 2 deep, intelligent black eyes with a terrifying depth reflected the faint light of the setting sun. A cold dread shot down James's spine. It was a gorilla. In a place where the wild was defined by bears and wolves, the presence of that colossal creature was a living nightmare, a mistake of nature, an aberration that should not have existed there. The horse, a creature of pure instinct, caught the scent of the threat and the vibration of its owner's fear. With a scream of panic, it reared, startled by the presence of the massive creature. James, an old and weathered cowboy, hadn't expected such a reaction. He lost his balance and was thrown violently from the saddle, landing hard on the ground. The impact sent his head spinning and a sharp pain exploded in his right shoulder. He struggled to get up, but his muscles wouldn't respond. The gun in his holster felt a world away. He was on the ground, defenseless, feeling the crushing weight of defeat. The dust settled, revealing the creature in all its terrifying glory. The gorilla was immense, its dark fur covering a mass of muscle that moved with an eerie, graceful power. This wasn't a caged animal. It was a wild beast with the kind of strength that shatters bone and tears flesh. The gorilla let out a low grunt, a sound of pure dominance that chilled James's blood. Its eyes, fixed on the cowboy, held no fury, only a cold, calculating gaze, like that of a predator who already knows the end of the game. The gorilla began to advance, its massive fists beating rhythmically against its chest. Each step was deliberate, unhurried. James, his breath caught in his throat, tried to crawl away, but the ground seemed to move beneath him. The creature approached slowly, like a giant from a nightmare. James closed his eyes, certain this was the end. But in the second the gorilla raised its hand for the final attack, the sound of ferocious barks filled the air. His 3 dogs, who had been frozen by fear, let out a unified roar of war. They were here to fight. The gorilla's fatal blow was a heartbeat away from crushing James, but the ferocity of nature was met with the ferocity of loyalty. In a flash of white, Tango, the oldest of the Dogos, launched himself forward like a projectile. His action was pure instinct, a protective reflex that ignored fear. With a growl that rumbled deep in his throat, he slammed against the gorilla's massive muscle, surprising it in the final second. Tango aimed for the gorilla's jaw, a calculated, precise bite. The beast, accustomed to intimidating everything in its path, was caught completely off guard, and its attack on James was halted. The battle for the cowboy's life had begun. The clash between the 2 creatures was a brutal explosion of sound and fury in the quiet forest. The gorilla, enraged by the interruption, let out a tremendous roar and used its free arm to try and crush Tango. But the Dogo was a blur of motion, his agility impressive. He dodged the massive blow by mere millimeters, and his bite deepened. Tango wasn't just a guard dog. He was a hunting dog, bred to fight large predators. His strength and stamina were unmatched, and the ferocity in his eyes mirrored the gorilla's brutality. The fight was a dance of death, a whirlwind of swift movements, guttural growls, and bone-shaking blows. Despite its pure ferocity, the gorilla was a force of nature. It used its immense weight and raw power to try and throw Tango off. It tried to punch him, to grab him with its massive hands. But Tango was a warrior. He held his grip on the gorilla's jaw and shook his head, making the beast shudder. The gorilla's skin, surprisingly, began to tear from Tango's persistent attack. For a brief moment, the gorilla found itself on the defensive, an experience it had likely never had before. Its attack on James was no longer the priority. The threat to its own life was. The unequal fight between the 2 was a spectacle of raw power. Tango knew he couldn't defeat the gorilla alone, but he wasn't alone. In the seconds he'd bought, Bruto and Nina moved in. They didn't rush blindly into the fray. As a team, they communicated silently, observing the gorilla as it struggled against Tango. The next moves they made would be what defined the outcome of the battle and perhaps the fate of their owner.
Tango's war cry was the signal for the team attack. It was no longer a fight by a lone dog, but the coordinated fury of 3 giants. Bruto, the most fierce and powerful of the group, joined the battle with overwhelming force. He didn't charge blindly, but as part of the trio, his gaze locked onto a single target, the gorilla's shoulder. His jaw of steel clamped down with a brutal pressure, aiming to immobilize the creature's arm and limit its ability to crush his brothers. While Bruto focused on causing maximum damage and limiting the gorilla's movements, Nina, the most cunning and agile, entered the fray. Her strategy was one of distraction. Nina didn't have Bruto's strength or Tango's experience, but her intelligence and speed were unmatched. She ran in circles around the gorilla, nipping at its heels, the lower part of its legs, and its tail. Her quick and relentless attacks prevented the gorilla from focusing on a single target, confusing it and forcing it to divert its attention away from Bruto. As the 2 brothers attacked the beast, Tango, the veteran of the group, took on the role of commander. He knew the attack had to be coordinated, not a chaotic brawl. Tango would growl and fall back, baiting the gorilla in Nina's direction, while Bruto prepared for a new assault. He coordinated his team's movements with a look,
controlling the rhythm of the battle. His wisdom was what transformed the trio of dogs into a tactical force, capable of fighting a force of nature. The gorilla, accustomed to crushing its prey with a single blow, was now at a disadvantage. It was large and powerful, but not agile enough to deal with three enemies in constant motion. Frustration turned into blind rage, and it lashed out at the dogs, using its immense mass and powerful arms. But for every attack it made, Nina would distract it, Bruto would bite it, and Tango would pull it back. The gorilla was like a blindfolded giant, fighting against a storm of teeth, muscle, and pure intelligence. The Dogo's coordination, slow but deadly, began to have a noticeable effect. The gorilla's shoulder started to bleed, and its movements became sluggish. The beast was weakening, exhausted and wounded. However, its rage had not yet extinguished. In a last desperate attempt to end the threat, the gorilla turned to the targets it considered easier, Bruto and Nina. It used what little strength it had left to deliver a final blow. The lives of Bruto and Nina were now in the crossfire, and the battle they had hoped to win was about to take a deadly turn.
The gorilla, in its final, desperate act, focused its fury on the two smaller dogs. Bruto and Nina, sensing the overwhelming power aimed at them, stood their ground. They had a singular mission: to protect their owner. Bruto took the brunt of the assault, his powerful frame shaking from the gorilla's relentless blows, while Nina dodged and weaved, her speed the only thing keeping her from being crushed. They refused to surrender, their loyalty burning brighter than their fear. They were willing to sacrifice everything for the man who was their family. Tango, the veteran, saw the impending disaster. He knew they couldn't endure the gorilla's rage forever. With a final guttural roar, he signaled to Bruto for one last, coordinated assault. It was all or nothing. As Nina created a crucial distraction, Tango latched onto the back of the gorilla's skull, a precise and painful anchor. At the same moment, Bruto, with the last of his immense strength, bit down hard on the gorilla's throat. The combined attacks were too much. With the skull and throat immobilized, the gorilla could not fight back, its strength sapping away with every passing second. The colossal creature, its momentum gone, its body finally overwhelmed, began to sway. Its eyes, once filled with cold calculation, now showed only confusion and exhaustion. The combined assault of the three dogs had done what no one thought possible. The gorilla stumbled, its legs giving out beneath its massive weight. With a final shuddering collapse, it fell to the ground in defeat, a colossal monument to its own failure. The brutal conflict that had shaken the quiet forest was over. A heavy silence followed the gorilla's fall. The three dogs stood over their defeated enemy, panting heavily, their bodies bruised and bleeding, their coats matted with dust and gore. Bruto had a deep gash on his shoulder, and Nina limped, but they were alive. They had done the impossible. They had won. The immense danger had passed, but the cost of their victory was etched into their weary bodies. They had been willing to die for their owner, and their courage had earned them a quiet, painful triumph.
The air was thick with the scent of fear and blood. James, still on the ground, his shoulder throbbing with a dislocated joint, pushed himself up. The silence was absolute, a deafening contrast to the brutal roar of the fight. He ignored the searing pain and the ringing in his ears, his only thought to get to his dogs. He crawled through the dirt, a desperate, painful pilgrimage toward the three white figures standing over their fallen enemy. The immense gorilla lay motionless, a grim testament to the sacrifice that had just been made. When he reached them, the sight was a mix of triumph and heartbreak. Nina was limping, a deep gash on her leg. Bruto was bleeding from multiple bites and cuts, a deep wound on his shoulder. Tango, the old warrior, stood with a weariness that showed in every line of his face, his own wounds silently weeping. James let out a guttural cry, a raw scream born of both agonizing frustration at their pain and an overwhelming surge of gratitude that they were alive. He reached out and touched each of them, a silent promise to save them as they had saved him. The journey back to the ranch was a grueling one. James, with his arm dangling uselessly, supported Nina as she struggled to walk. Bruto and Tango walked close to his side, their powerful bodies now just a shell of their former selves. Exhausted but still protective, the simple act of putting one foot in front of the other was an immense effort for all of them. The pain was a constant companion, but it was a small price to pay for the priceless gift of life they had given him. They were a shattered, limping unit, but their bond had never been stronger. As they emerged from the forest, the other cowboys saw the gruesome sight: an old man, pale with shock and pain, and 3 bleeding, battered dogs. There was no need for words. Their faces said it all. The cowboys rushed to their aid, their silent disbelief and horror turning into frantic action. They carried Bruto and Nina and supported James as they all made their way back to the ranch house. The fight was over, but a new chapter, one of healing and profound gratitude, had just begun.
As the weeks passed, James and his 3 companions began to heal. The dislocated shoulder mended. The deep gashes on the dogs' bodies became scars of honor. But the most significant change wasn't physical, it was in their hearts. James had reclaimed his peace of mind, no longer a victim, but a survivor, saved by the impossible courage of his dogs. And the dogs themselves, who had always been a quiet part of his life, were now living legends, their loyalty having earned them a legacy that would echo across the region for generations to come. Word of the impossible battle spread like wildfire, carried by the ranch hands and cowboys who had witnessed their return. The tale of the man saved from a gorilla by his 3 dogs became the most talked about story in every saloon and farmhouse in Texas. People came from all over, wanting to see the heroes who had faced a monster. They wanted to witness the unbelievable bond with their own eyes. Soon, offers began to pour in, bids of staggering amounts of money from collectors and breeders who wanted to own a piece of the legend. But James's answer was the same for every single offer: a firm and immediate refusal. He would not, could not sell his dogs. They're not just dogs, he would say, his voice thick with emotion. They're my family. They fought for me when no one else could, and you can't put a price on that kind of loyalty. For James, their value had nothing to do with money. It was measured in the life they saved and the unbreakable bond they had forged in the face of death. To honor their bravery, James bought them new, ornate leather collars. Each one bore a unique inscription that was both a name and a testament to their heroism. Tango, the veteran leader, wore a collar with the words, "My silent shield." Bruto, the unwavering powerhouse who never gave up, was given the title, "The strength that does not retreat." And Nina, the agile and intelligent strategist who bled for her family, had her collar inscribed with "The courage that bleeds and does not flee." Their nicknames became their new identities, a permanent reminder of the day they became heroes. Months passed. The deep wounds on the dogs' bodies healed into pale, proud scars. The bone in James's shoulder knitted back together, but the invisible wounds, the echoes of the fight, lingered. One day, James, feeling an unspoken need for closure, saddled his horse and rode back to the forest. By his side were Tango, Bruto, and Nina, their new collars gleaming in the sun. As they approached the clearing, the dogs' ears perked up, a silent memory passing between them, but they showed no fear. The site, once a battlefield of terror, was now a quiet monument to their bravery. James dismounted and stood in the very spot where he had fallen. He ran his hand over the weathered wood of the fence, remembering the impact, the sheer terror. He looked down at his 3 dogs, their eyes calm and full of devotion. The fear that had once consumed him had been replaced by a gratitude so immense it was difficult to put into words. This place was no longer a place of horror. It was sacred ground, a permanent reminder of the loyalty that had stared down a monster and won. The incredible story of the cowboy and his 3 Dogos became a legend,
told and retold by ranchers and families for generations. It was a story not just about survival, but about a bond forged in fire, a symbol of unconditional love and unwavering loyalty between a man and his dogs. The events of that day proved that some battles are not won with weapons, but with a courage so deep it can defy the impossible. What did you think of this incredible tale of loyalty and sacrifice? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Your reactions fuel our passion for finding and sharing these amazing stories. If this story moved you, don't let its echo fade. By subscribing to Wind Echo Untold, you're not just getting more videos, you're helping us tell the forgotten stories of ordinary heroes who did the impossible. Hit that subscribe button and become part of our journey to share the true power of resilience.